next presenters, which is the general operations. And I'm sure Janessa or Casey, Janessa probably most likely.
Well, what do you mean by that? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so what we have is a side-by-side comparison. And I think we're recording again. Thanks for the text. So as you see in the, these are all the areas that AS General Ops needs to function. Our original request in the pink was just like a Hail Mary. We hadn't talked to Molly yet. We hadn't figured out a lot of things. And so we just did like, just to cover any possible case scenario. So knowing that it would never be this high. We have now, last week, you gave us a recommended budget of $286,800. Down at the bottom, you see that as our target as of 410. So what we did is we're proposing two different scenarios. One is with 3 employees in AS, and the second is with 2 employees. Please note that if you don't go with Wells Fargo, we need to bump that bank charge up by about $1,300. So scenario 2 is $354,000, which is a difference of $67,606, and then scenario 3 with 2 employees is a difference of $77,50. So while we would absolutely love to continue with 3 employees, we know that across the board we're asking students to not be employed. I mean, this is incredibly difficult. I can't sugarcoat this at all at this point. I'm just putting numbers out for you. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. I muted myself while you were presenting. I couldn't unmute. Thank you, Janessa, for that, and for that. I get it. I'll open it up now for some questions. If anyone has questions about to Janessa, I'm not seeing any. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next appeal. This is the AS government appeal. Okay. So, Lisbeth, did you want to go ahead and start off this conversation? Janessa, Lisbeth needs to be unmuted.
Okay, there you go. Hi, everyone. So this is for the AS government budget. And so as you all can see, the original request is right there in red. And then the appeal is for what is in green. You can see below them, both are their totals. And so that is kind of like the target. There is a $131 different, $831 difference. If you all take a look at some of the differences, was that committee compensation was reduced to $15,000, and then what else was added to was our external affairs travel to CSA and Lobby Corp. And one of our budget creations, for some reason it was just missed, but there it is. We added that on there. We have note front desk student workers. And so with that, we have began to cut the conversation on how is that going to work? How is AES going to function with no student assistance? And so we have come up with some ideas of just how probably having more things on our Google Drive in order to help members, board members, guide themselves through Google creations and things such as that. Then if you go back, if you look down, we have the board member stipends that we have had this conversation from one of our past resolutions, and that's going to be revisited and brought to you all from the Board of Finance on April 24th. So I will leave that conversation because that number is subject to change pending the decision of the Board of Directors. Yeah, Jeremiah, do you want me to continue or do you want to take on the rest?
I can just add on to kind of what you just said. You know, for at least in regards to the stipends amount, that amount is subject to, again, to the action that the Board of Directors can take. In the resolution itself, it was said that the Board of Directors could consider taking action on the proposal from the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance just wanted to make sure that there was a number in there, so that way the Board of Directors could really see what that would look like in the overall picture. Because if the Board of Directors decided to change it based upon what the Board of Finance is recommending, then that's what it will kind of pan out to. But we're fully aware of what's going on, and that's why, you know, I think moving forward, I know I was the author of that resolution. Moving forward, I would really recommend that the action that come out of that would be that the Board of Directors would recommend that proposal move into the strategic plan for future student leaders to take a look at, and seeing how maybe in times of when the budget bounces back, because it will bounce back eventually, may not be while we are here, but eventually things will start to turn around. When that time does happen, you want to make sure that the student leaders involved are compensated enough for the work that they are due, because they do a lot of work. They have meetings upon meetings. They have to deal with Zoom bombings and figuring out ways on how to stay together. And it's overall really, really tough work. And I want to make sure that future student leaders are compensated and motivated to do the work that they do. So that's pretty much the gist of that. There are some other things coming along in the next couple of items that Elizabeth and I will kind of tag team on and present to the rest of the board, and how these numbers fall into the overall larger picture. And so we're just looking forward to that as well. I think we can really make something better, so that way all students can be served in a different way. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and ask for questions. Question from Claudia.
What's local advocacy?
So local advocacy, basically what local advocacy is, as we defined it in here. So if you all don't remember, there was a recommendation that came from those who visited CHES, specifically Officer Cuellar, and talking about basically, you know, what if we could have CHES here, or some version of CHES here for the local students, and how to provide some local advocacy in the areas that we reside in. And so Elizabeth and I, we took a look at that and decided, you know, well, it would be cheaper to do something like that overall. And so what we said was, okay, well, let's put a number around that and figure out what that looks like, because it was really the travel involved, and then the amount of people that were traveling to go to CHES. And so, but if we just took the travel piece out, looking at this, that is where that 3,000 comes from. So that way folks could still have the opportunity to legislate and advocate on that part, but this would be in place of CHES is among the many conferences that we are able to, meetings that this board is able to partake in. This is just kind of it's big, like overall, and Elizabeth, you can kind of add some more if you want to. But yeah, did I get your question?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any more questions? So question from Gio. So where would we be advocating on the local level? So, you know, that could really, I think, take a large effect maybe in the surrounding communities that we have. Also, too, there are creative ways I think that we can find in regards to advocating, because what happens is, honestly, a lot of the legislative work, the work that gets done that gets done on creating the bills and writing out the legislation that gets passed at chess happens prior to actually prior to chess. And so if we focus on some creative new ways on how to create that same type of legislation or advocacy prior to chess, then we could work creatively with those who actually attend chess in different schools in different areas to try to produce the same type of results. I know it's not the same field. You can't replace that field because it's going to the capital. And that's something that a lot of students are going to have to miss out on just due to the circumstances that we're in. You know, we're trying to figure out, well, how do we provide the same type of services or similar services with less. So there's a comment from Quayar on the Student Leadership Summit. I think this was the piece. So Janessa, if you can go ahead and unmute Quayar.
Oh, okay. So when I had approached the Board of Finance about perhaps allocating funds to a student leadership summit here on campus, the idea of this was I personally attended chess, and it wasn't quite the most efficient way to uplift the student voice and practice student advocacy. So I suggested perhaps instead of going to Sacramento to learn about lobbying and learn about student advocacy, we could do so locally here at HSU, but I still intended doing a trip to Sacramento. I think that was still like, we would be lobbying together as a group at Sacramento at the Capitol, but we would be lobbying to our local representatives, and it would cut the cost of like hotel stays and stuff, but we would still be in Sacramento, I believe.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Are there any more questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, let me. Kyle says, can she be unmuted?
Okay, I missed the intro to this first thing, and I'm just wondering like some things about like why does it say that external affairs had no request? Second, when did you and Liz decide that that was like a thing that local advocacy had to do? The reason why local advocacy was like decided in between like the chess members is because we feel very disconnected from the priorities that CSSA had versus the ones that HSU has. And that's one of the reasons why it was better to go towards our own goals, because what seemed like it was that CSSA was trying to, well, they were controlling our goal, which was like fixed financial aid, and that was a topic, and you could only speak about fixed financial aid when we were worried about other things like student safety, and so it's like very different issues that like we are facing versus like them. Not saying that fixed financial aid is not important, but that's one of the reasons why local advocacy had to like.
Thank you, Pao. I really appreciate that. I forgot that piece of the conversation, and thank you for bringing that up.
Question. So is Pao and or Mayuli, are they advocating for more resources for the chess piece? If it's going to include some travel, question mark?
I missed it. Sorry, my internet's not good.
Are you advocating for an increase to the amount for chess?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I did make a request, and that's what I mean. That's where I'm very confused on like what happened. I think I requested around. It was more than 10,000, and I would like to request at least. You see, like my math is not there, and now I'm just like very like I feel very left out too, even for the fact that it says original request 0. And that I had talked about all that in the application. So that's just my.
So Kendra just added that Pao had made a request around 19,000 originally.
Yeah, so that's like big difference. And like if anything, like I'm just very concerned too because it would cut a lot of meetings. And yeah, that's a lot of trouble.
So those numbers down there are the ones from Kendra's worksheet.
Thank you, Kendra.
Those were supposed to have been submitted, but they didn't get submitted, and they didn't get submitted with the government. And so the first round, you're right, external affairs was not represented. So that's why this round we tried to put external affairs in. The other thing to remember is while it might have been at 19,000 originally, that all stipends are up here now. No stipends are floating separately. So so that 19 wouldn't be as high also. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was aware that the external affairs stipend was already not included, but I was talking about just how important it was to bring more people into those meetings, and how we needed more of that, and how impactful chess alone was this year. And, you know, it's obviously a priority. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Pal, for offering those pieces of conversations. I mean, those pieces to add to that conversation, because we were missing some stuff. Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize, Pal. I definitely did not have the background information on why external affairs wasn't in the request. I was also a bit concerned, but dealing with a lot, we were just like, okay, let's put them back in. And yeah, like the stipend is on there. And the thing is that what we're looking at is that there's a lot of cuts that we have to make. So also I can understand how like the name of local advocacy can be misleading, but I might have also, like, this is where I may have like done not represented well enough, because I thought that that's what that was for, local advocacy. It was for to be able to still do the advocating here and still go to chess. I knew that like the numbers were going to be lower, so that's why like I was kind of like, okay, like let's like still give 3,000, because I was like, okay, we could really be cut down costs when we do the advocating here locally, and then make sure that like the rest is allocated to being able to advocate still at the Capitol, because I definitely was part of those conversations and like knew exactly what it was. So that's why I was like, okay, like maybe since I knew what it meant, I didn't communicate that very well. So I definitely apologize for that. Apologize for like not having that full knowledge on the external affairs. But yeah, we tried to like have some allocation go on there, which is like why you see the 3,000. So definitely thank you for like bringing it back up and all of that. That like just makes everything more clear. Thank you.
All right. So, are there any more questions for the government budget? Not seeing any. With that being said, I believe this is the last one for us. The written request from Rec Sports. So I'll go ahead and read it. Y'all can listen along if you want to. So this is to the Associated Students Committee from John Henry, Director of Recreational Sports. This is regarding the appeal of AS budget for fall 2020/spring 2021. This was sent on April 16, 2020. And it reads, please accept this appeal from the AS for the AS budget for recreational sports. Our ask was originally $33,000 for 15 items to compete and represent Humboldt State in rugby, lacrosse, ultimate, crew, and cycling, to name a few. All sports have league dues that range from $100 to $8,000 a year. The preliminary amount you have earmarked for sports clubs is $21,000. $21,100, the difference being $11,900. We cannot continue our league play without help from AS/IRA. Don't get me wrong, our office and each student also contributes to their season by paying for food, equipment, and travel costs, not picked up by the university. They also are required to fundraise at least $850 each for their team. Sports clubs have 500 plus participants each year. I do not understand why we are going. I do understand that we are going into this crisis with the HSU budget. I do expect to take a hit, but I am hoping that we can continue to provide this outlet for our students. as engagement on a team representing your university, something that contributes to better mental health and retention. With that said, good luck with your decisions, and I know you have a tough job. Thank you for your consideration. Oh, that was a written letter given from Jan Henry, Director of Recreational Sports. So, you know, I had maybe more so of a question for the university in itself, is why isn't the university funding sports in this way? And I think my question really is just that we're putting this burden on the backs of students to support. Yes, we want to support students, but in this time, why are we supporting students? Why are we supporting students? Why are we supporting students that need to be supported by athletics? And this is my question to them. And I don't see our university rep here to have that convo. Hand raise from Molly.
Hi, I can talk a little bit to that. Rec sports are not an official NCAA athletic group. They are, as their name states, a recreational sport. So they are more aligned with our student organizations than they are with an athletic department. One of the reasons why they currently are structured underneath athletics is purely because it helps them with space reservations and all of that. With that being said, to be a part of a rec sport is a really high cost activity. And so one of the reasons why they request funding to support this type of activity from the associated students is to ensure that it's accessible to more students. The cost of travel, as you all know, outside of Humboldt County is really high. And for them to be an actual competitive recreational sport, they need to compete against other institutions. And so they do have to travel pretty regularly. The funding that they get from the associated students is a lot less than what they actually need. And so the groups typically do a lot of fundraising. And then on top of that, will pay for things on their own as individuals. And so their request to the AS helps to make it accessible for more students. And since they are a student organization rather than an athletic department, because they aren't NCAA, they again fall under more our type of groups rather than an actual sport on campus, if that helps to answer your question at all.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. And I really do appreciate that. Like, I'm not saying that that I completely understand the logistics of it and everything, how it works and how it plays out. But ultimately, fundamentally, the question is why are student fees being allocated towards athletics in its whole and in its entirety, and things like this are being left out, and then they're left to basically ask and beg that for the crumbs that are left. And it's tough, and it's really difficult for us as students to kind of go through this situation and figure out, okay, well, how can we best support them when the university itself doesn't want to have these really hard, difficult conversations at that level. And so that's my fundamental philosophical question that I don't expect you to answer or anybody in this group to answer. But I think it's some food for thought as we move forward with these discussions. I think us as advocates need to game up on our advocacy skills. We do amazing things. Don't get me wrong, and I appreciate each and every one of your support in every way across campus. But asking fundamental questions like this is really important to make sure that our students that are doing these great things and competing in these areas, that they're being supported as well, fully. But yeah, I digress. With that being said, is there any questions about this? Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is the 2020-21 recommended budget adjustments. This is an action item. So the AS Board of Directors shall interview programs and that submit an appeal. No additions or deletions may be made to the recommended budget until appeal interviews are completed. If the AS Board of Directors is considering altering the Board of Finance's recommendation, the program must be contacted and given an opportunity to hear before the Board of Directors. So basically what the board has the opportunity to do now is look at the budget after hearing those appeals that we just got done hearing and figuring out ways about how we are going to move forward and adjust as we adapt with these strange times. So with that being said, I don't believe I have to keep saying that these are some strange times. I'm pretty sure we've all have heard it, and we all have seen the numbers line up together, and we all heard the different pleas from different groups on how they would be best supported underneath these circumstances. But so with that being said, we have Lisbeth and I looked at this along with coordination with the executive director and figuring out ways about how we as internally as AS can support everyone in this process. So Lisbeth, if you want to go ahead and take this part of the conversation and steer us towards the potential 2020-2021 presentation to the board of directors. She might need to be unmuted.
All right. Hello, everyone, again. So what you are looking right now at the screen is what could we possibly look like. These are definitely tough times, and the decisions made to create this and to get this rolling have definitely been difficult, but we try to represent you as in the best way as possible. With that, if you take a look at this, you will be able to see that we have earmarked events that the programs usually tend to have every academic year. And so those amounts, you can see them right next to them, right next to them. And so you are going to be able to see that AS Club Grants Leadership Conference / they were recommended allocated $10,000. And basically, just an overview of this, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty in a bit, is that you'll be able to see the applicants highlighted in yellow, and the employees. We have, for example, the AS Government, External Affairs, and External Affairs. The front desk student assistants have been allocated no money, as stated earlier. Stipends, that is the amount pending the approval of the BOD. And supplies, we have budgeted $250 for that. Travel for CSSA is $18,500, and that totals out over on your far right as the total. And Janessa, can we okay, no, never mind. Total looks fine. Also on column R, you are able to see that is the group ones, which group we are envisioning them to become, what we envision will happen. At this point, we definitely are going to be changing, and with that, some of you are no longer going to be AS funded programs, so you're probably going to be turning into clubs or going to be turning into group threes. And so that is also built in within this recommendation. And so that is why we have the earmarked events, and these you will get definitions on what is an event and everything else in a little bit as the presentation goes. So yeah, if you look at AS General Operations, we have 2 pro staff, and we have the amount right there. We do not need to allocate any stipends for telecom and the BMS agreement that we have with facilities. Now with facilities with the SBS, you will be able to see the amount allocated there. For CHES, CS Unity, and AOA, we have allocated none, and that is because we understand the cuts that need to be made. AOA membership, at that moment it says 600. Yeah. And then publications amounts, manuals, that is 450 for a total. That is stated right there, staying as a group 1. And the Campus Center for Appropriate Technology, CCAT, we have allocated funding for 10 employees, and the amount is right there at 35,000. Stipends would not be allocated, and utilities telecom is $5,120 for the grand total right there again of 4,100. Never great with reading. $40,120, and the recommendation is for you all to become a group 3. And yeah, that takes us into the Children's Center, where we have employees, and we have provided funding of 6,500, and that stays at that total since they do not need supplies or any of those things. We only fund student wages, and that would be becoming a group 3 as well. The club and program support at clubs, the front desk student workers, we have allocated an amount of $8,640. Supplies, we have allocated $3,600 for that, and that totals out to $12,240, being a group 3. Then we go over to HSUO SNAP, and we have allocated only $10,000 for the food, and that is at a group 3. The Merchant Lumberjacks equipment supplies, we have allocated $4,000 and have it at a group 3. Jeremiah, let me know whenever you want to chime in, or at any point that you.
If you're tired of talking, I can take over.
No, I'm so good. I'll definitely have you take over after the Multicultural Center though.
Okay.
So for the Multicultural Center, we have allocated funding for 15 students, and you all can see that that is $13,000. Office supplies have gone to $0, and for a grand total of $13,000 at a group 3. Go on, Jeremiah.
Okay, thank you. So you left off with scholarships?
Yes.
Okay, so what this scholarship is, where it came from, was basically the Scholarship Without Borders used to have a scholarship that they would award out to some students, basically to help out with things like their scholarships to be able to go and travel related to DACA. And so basically what we're saying is, okay, well, let's keep this scholarship going because we want to make sure that these students are awarded that amount, but let's move this internally. So let's bring this scholarship back to AS as a group 1 program, or it's a group 1 item for that scholarship to kind of move along with the whole process, basically. So that way we can make sure that the scholarship is being awarded appropriately and with mindfulness. So that's what that scholarship is for. Next up is sports rec. Sports clubs / rec sports. So basically, we looked at this and we pulled apart some items in this budget, and we looked at the fact that the coordinator was costing about $6,500 for that, and then we looked at the club sports itself. The travel amounts regarded to that was about $15,500. The club teams in itself, the registration for all of their teams was about $4,000, and then the total was about $26,000. So we decided, okay, well, yeah, let's keep it. Let's try to fund this at $26,000 to make sure that we can still provide some type of support to this area, but also put increasing pressure on campus administration and athletics to really make sure that they pick up the slack for these students who deserve to be treated like they are part of HSU and HSU athletes in general, because they're athletes. You ask them, they're athletes. They're not any different from any other athlete on this campus. So with that said, we're going to keep it at group 3 with Jan Henry, I believe, still being the budget administrator for that one. So that's what happened with that. With SAG was originally group 2. Group 2s, the difference between group 2s and group 1s. Group 1 is really core to AS up front with us, right? Like really close. Group 2s are like, okay, we're looking at you, we're managing you, but you're often doing your own thing. Group these are like, okay, you're kind of managed by another third party, because we can make sure that, so that we can make sure things are still going smoothly, but also making sure that we don't internally get overwhelmed. So student assets gallery, basically we decided to overall increase so that way they can have the support that they need, and move them to a group 3 so that way they can get the proper support from perhaps the art department or some other group. Conversations still need to be had with them in regards to that. The internal, so student legal lounge, if those reps are still on here, you'll notice this is a really huge difference in regards to this. So what this is about, basically we decided, okay, well, we want to make sure that student legal lounge is still offering services. We've noticed that student legal lounge in their services kind of help out other programs and help out other departments around campus to really that legal advice. And so we said we noticed some commonalities between the lobby corps and the student legal lounge. They're both offering services. They're both making sure that they can help out different areas around campus. While lobby corps is aimed towards more statewide, and legal lounge seems more regional and central to HSU. If we can kind of bridge these together to make sure that some services can still be available to students, that would be great. And so what we decided to do is we're recommending that we move this to a group 1 program, in that it comes and works in coordination, close coordination with the lobby corps to really make sure that these students are still compensated that amount in regards to the stipends, but that that legal service can still be available to students across campus. The Waste Resource Reduction Awareness Program, WRAP, we know that there are some things that they really want to do, which is only about 2, like main programs. They have about 10 employees, question mark, because we don't know what that looks like coming into next year. For the supplies and services, about 3,500. And then that's a grand total of about 28,500. And there, we were also recommended that they move towards, or consider moving towards, a group 3 status to make sure that, AS internally can make sure that we stay together. As we are constricting internally, we don't have necessarily the same amount of support that can be applied to different areas around campus anymore, because just due to budget constraints in general. And so that's what we're recommending coming out from the Waste Resources and Awareness Program. You'll also notice one huge thing, kind of what I'll touch back on what Lisbeth said. These earmark programs over here, they're basically what each individual program that we originally had in that long drawn out budget, all of their events. Because one thing we want to make sure is that we provide the same amount of events and support to them in that regard, to make sure that they're still able to do the things that they wanted to do to serve the community. And we want to make sure that students are still able to benefit from that, because they pay fees here and they deserve to be, they deserve to be entertained and given the proper atmosphere that goes along with being an HSU student. And so that's what the separation is about, and that's what earmarks are about. As we'll get to the event breakdown in just a moment, you'll see that it's broken down up until different places. Thank you, Janessa. So the event breakdown, so basically for these different groups, AS Collabs, AS Grant Clubs, the group D is AS Internal and Publications. So what we did was earmark certain dollar amounts for each fund to make sure that the students overall could still get receive those funds next year. So, and what earmarked means is like, yes, we're going to award these funds specifically for our I'm sorry, the comment threw me off a little bit, but thank you, Kimberly. We're going to award these funds specifically with a recommendation or the stipulation actually that this amount of funds go towards this program, X program, Y program, and so on and so forth. As you'll see up here, we have an AS Leadership Conference to make sure that our student leaders are built up, because that's one of the AS goals, to build our leaders up. AS Club Grants, you'll see a huge increase here because we're understanding that we're asking a lot out of AS Club Grants in the first place, and then we want to make sure that we have some still left over to provide support to every other club. but just making sure that we try to give some flexibility in regards to the AS core programs that are moving towards this club kind of status. You know, these are really some unfortunate situations. You know, I was sitting here looking at this and I'm like, I don't know how. It was struggling. It was a struggle for me to wrap my mind around this, and it was really hard to even continue and participate in these discussions, because it's like, you know, I don't feel good about this at all. It's really hard for me as a student to look at this and say, okay, well, this is what we have. This is what we have to give. But this is how we can build something better out of it. So that's I don't know, that's just my internal struggle that I'm going along with this. But overall, I believe that this, if we hang on to this, and if we do this for about at least the next year, the year after that, we can put together a plan that really makes more sense in regards to the overall situations, and we can figure out how AS is branded. If this is this magical number that we want, let's work together to achieve it. And I think those conversations could be had later on next semester to make sure that our dreams overall as a student union are achieved. That being said, I think I'll go ahead and end it there.
Jeremiah, do I have, what I'd like to do is go in and I wrote down the club's update. So for example, their updated request was 3,000 instead of 3,600 for supplies, and 2,400 in movies instead of, what was it called? Movie rights. So I'd like to update those.
Yeah, no problem, go ahead.
So movie rights would be changed, and then on this one, clubs there. Okay.
Okay, so that brings our grand total 707,352.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that part. So we are over budget, over our target amount in being 700, but I believe, and I believe Elizabeth believes as well, that if we allocate about 703, we were willing to do 707. If we allocate around 703, then I think that our unspent that we were expecting to come in, it can help offset this minor cost. And then we're also requesting that if any unspent funds do come back to AS, and you can see in this draft recommended accompanying language, I don't know if Elizabeth, if Janessa wants to jump over there for me. So in this, in this draft recommendation, recommended accompanying language to go along with the budget. Basically, these definitions will be kind of given to the board of directors that are incoming for next year, kind of help out with conversations regarding to the budget. So the general recommendations are stipulations that this board would put into effect, and we're recommending to you all, would really be along the lines about, you know, speakers and when requesting publicity and so forth and so on. But one thing I do want to touch upon is the unspent part. So if you can scroll down for me, Janessa. I can't hear you. Oh.
Lizbeth has her hand up.
Oh, I didn't. I went full screen, so I couldn't see anybody's hand. There you go. Go ahead, Lizbeth.
I just wanted to add, I think we kind of like didn't specify about the stipends. So the way that the stipends are right there shown is that you all would be getting a stipend along with the work that you all put into this event. So for example, for let's see if we can scroll down so I can get. So for example, for the Harvest Festival, all members that would be working on that would be getting a stipend to make sure that, of course, like we do not want to have anyone feeling like they're doing like all this work and they're not getting compensated. So that's why like we still want to honor those wages and want to honor that students put work and put so much into this. And so that's what would be accompanying with the event would be your stipends, and that would be in work to be worked with the AS and in collaboration to know exactly how we're going to draft up that language to make sure that you all have that stipend. And yeah, just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Liz. that's an important piece to add on there. Yeah, because we want to make sure that no student feels exploited for the work that they're contributing to the campus community, because it's valuable. Raise hand from Brianna. And then we'll go Amora.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just had a question. I know on the previous one that we were looking at for the AS, like government operations, the committee compensation was in that one, but on this page, I don't see it. So I'm just wondering if that was lost in translation, if it's completely cut, or what was the conversation, what like basically what's going on with that one.
Okay, let's first off make sure that the numbers are correct for the government affairs and external affairs. But I do see what you're saying. And we'll just give Janessa a little bit of time to do that, to put that all together.
Okay.
Well, I don't think we're frozen.
So Kendra had a comment.
Kendra did have a comment. She said, with a budget of 294,550, 3 pro staff can stay on. Okay. Elizabeth, she had a question.
At the moment, there hasn't been movement with that. I do have a meeting set up for this following coming Wednesday, and so all of those concerns will be touched then with VP Dawes and Amber Blixley.
Amal, you want to go ahead and just type out your question? Unless you can speak right now.
Oh, okay. So I was just gonna type it out. but since I'm on speaker, my question is, and I'll type it out after this, on the 2020 to 2021 recommended budget, the Check It budget was cut to nothing. Is the Check It program one that has a significant source of other funding than AS?
So I'm going to ask you to clarify Check It program.
What?
So you reference a Check It program.
Yes.
Hi, Jeremiah. I think I could speak to this. It's Casey.
Okay, go ahead, Casey.
Amal, I believe you're looking at the 2018-19 budget summary, actually. And so Check It originated as with AS funding for about its first 5 years. But they did receive grant funding and ceased their application into AS for funding because they recognized that we're a limited resource and they were funded by other areas. So it wasn't a decision of the AS not to fund it, it's that Check It stopped applying because they have other funding.
Thank you, Casey. I'm going to ask that the meeting be extended 40 minutes. So can I get a motion to extend the meeting 40 minutes? And this can be a motion in the chat. So I'm saying 40 minutes, so 8:40 would be the time. There's a motion on the floor to extend the meeting. Can you specify in the motion what time? So there was a question, is anything can be tabled? Can anything be tabled? So on the agenda itself, I guess high priority is making sure that we get to this first, get to this initial document right here that we're still on. We do have a second reading of legislation that I think that needs to go through because it's in the second reading already. We do have 2 pieces of legislation on the table, and then one checking account, the switching the banks conversation that needs to be had. With the time that we have left, if we decide to table something, we're just gonna end up with a longer meeting anyways. So it's either set for now, set for later. So yes, I do foresee us having a packed agenda next week. So there's a motion on the floor to extend the meeting to 8:40. There's a second. I see a number 2, so I'm going to interpret that as second. It's a second. And then there's a motion on the floor and a second to extend the meeting to 8:40. Is there any objections or abstentions to this motion happening? One abstention from Conga Livingstone. With that being said, the motion passes. The meeting is, extended until 8:40. So to answer your question, Ali, the extra 40 minutes, it will help tremendously if we can just get through this in the next few minutes, and then we can really save time on the legislation that is to come, as they are both in their first readings. So with that being said, I don't know where Janessa went off to.
I'm here. I just have my camera hidden, so it makes me think I'm not on camera, and I will do something embarrassing. So Bree has a question.
Question from Bree.
Yeah, just my initial question wasn't really addressed. I was just looking for a yes or no if the committee compensation package was still going to be, like, is it in this budget that I'm staring at, you know? for this
Yes.
whole-
So I apologize for that. That was overlooked. We're working on multiple spreadsheets in a very short period of time. So I extremely apologize. I believe this is closer. We have 86 here, and then there's some training over here. So as you can see, budgets were kind of pulled apart a little bit. We've got events over here and then everything else on this side. So 86 plus events over here, 86 plus 11.5 gets us closer.
So Bree, we just put it in there.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. I just wanted clarification, honestly.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So with that being said, this is what we have, and we're recommending now. The grand total, we're closer to it, is about 717. So Elizabeth, I don't know where you want to take this conversation now, but I'll say that, this would be super beneficial, I think, in a lot of different areas, in regards to how we function as AS and how AS can serve the community and serve just specifically our students. So this is a recommendation that we have for the board of directors to take as we move forward.
I think presenting at this moment the stipulations and the vocabulary would be beneficial. So I can kind of start this conversation. So I don't know, Joseph, we could zoom in just to have the definitions right now and then. All right, so for a program event, what we would consider as a program event is a program event will be defined for these purposes as an event planned out in close coordination with the associated students, AS government. All Group 3 AS program events will be considered to be program events. So campus event A is a campus event will be defined for these purposes as an event that is planned and carried out in a close coordination with the AS government and campus partners, such as Humboldt State University, HSU administration, HSU Housing, University Center, the UC, and the UC funded areas. A club event will be defined for these purposes as an event that is planned and carried out by an HSU recognized club. Planner. A planner for these purposes will be defined as a person who works to organize and carry out events. And publicity. For these purposes, publicity shall be defined as an advertisement on any platform relating to the promotion of a program, campus, and club event. So for the general recommendation stipulations, the first one that we have is all program events, campus events, and club event planners will A, when requesting speakers, use university faculty, student, and staff, and work in coordination with the AS general operations staff. B, when creating publicity, work in coordination with the AS student affairs vice president and the AS public relations officer. C, when creating event ideas, work in coordination with the AS general operations staff and the AS Student Affairs Vice President, and the AS Public Relations Officer to ensure that all events maintain. I don't know if that was supposed to be continue. Okay. Well,
Jeremiah, do you remember what the end of that was?
Yeah, I think I got sidetracked when I was writing it and didn't finish that sentence. Didn't finish my thought. So when creating event ideas, work in coordination with the AS General Operations Staff, AS Student Affairs Vice President, and AS Public Relations Officer to ensure that all events maintain a.
It's AS branding, I believe, from your guys' conversations.
This is one. So maintain student. Strong AS Brown works.
All right, so 2, all Group 2 programs moving to Group 3 status will work in close coordination with the AS Executive Director and AS President to ensure student leadership is supported and encouraged until student employment opportunities can be explored during the 21 to 2022 AS budget allocation process. And 3, all scholarships funded by the AS fees are to be awarded in close coordination with the AS President and the AS Executive Director. Specific recommendations. Jeremiah, do you want to finish us off with this one?
Yeah, Humboldt International Film Festival, HIFE is, we recommend that it uses its reserves to offset the cost of their functions for the 2020-2021 year and reapply for 2021-2022 AS funding during the next budget application period. Basically because we've identified that HIFE has pretty large reserves and can cover itself at least for this next year. Number 2 is Association of Government, working coordination with the club's office to move staff support of elections. So one thing that we're not recommending is that we move the entire system over yet. What we're recommending though is that we move the staff support of it over to the club's office just to alleviate some pressures on our side and make sure that the staff, that the entire process works pretty smoothly. Number 3 is Association's Government. We're recommending that if AS has unspent funds for the 2019-20 year, if 2019-2020 funds, well, funds from this year are unspent, basically in the fall of 2020, that's when those funds will kind of be identified after consulting. So if there's funds available, then after consulting the AS reserve policy, up to 30% of the unspent funds may be added to the AS collaborative fund to be allocated according to that allocation process. Number 4, student legal lounge, working close coordination with the AS government to keep services going. We've already kind of talked about that in the prior discussion. Student Assets Gallery, which is SAG, working coordination with the Associate Students President and Executive Director to move towards a Group 3 status program for the 2020-2021 academic year. Number 6 is Campus CCAT, work in coordination with the AS President and Executive Director to explore becoming an AS Group 3 status program. And the same thing we are recommending that it happens with RAP to carry out that process as well. So, yeah. This is our overall recommendation for the entire budget and kind of like some initial budget language or company language, whatever makes you feel safer. Just to make sure that we can still provide something for our students next year with these circumstances that we're in. Yeah, so are there any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat either. So
Hi, I guess I have a question if I can ask.
Yes.
Has there been consultation on the effect of stipends with club officers? I'm not familiar of anything like that on campus currently, and I'm just wondering about the supervision and like the project management that comes with now providing stipended people with like an event to coordinate and how they maintain accountable without actually being an employee.
Yeah, so I think some language in the budget language is definitely going to be needed for the Board of Finance to kind of look over, and that's where those pieces of conversation can come in at, because we need to figure out ways about how to do that. In addition, you know, in regards to the officer part, we're moving away from that because we understand that that might open a whole other can of worms that necessarily might not want to be tackled right now. So yeah, so that's my answer. I'm not sure if it was fully answered for you, but Lizbeth, if you have anything to add, or Janessa.
I see Molly might have some input. So Molly, our whole intent is we won't be able to, we're out of compliance with 1068. So there are multiple reasons we won't be able to have AS employees, student employees next year. So we were trying to strategize with, okay, some could maybe be a group 3 if a department was willing to adopt them for at least a year. And then we were trying to figure out, well, how can we compensate some of these club leaders who are putting on amazing events and provide some sort of like financial support because we know that sometimes some students who would like to be involved cannot because they don't have a lot of free time because they're working 20 to 40 hours in addition to going to school. So if people are moving away from stipends, what are some ideas, Molly, that could be used to provide that support for club leaders?
Truthfully, I don't have an answer to you. We just have been told as a CSU that we shouldn't be doing stipends. Housing, for example, used to give stipends to their RAs in the residence halls. And they were basically told by the CSU they shouldn't be doing it. And that was one of our last programs that had a stipended program. So they have had to find alternative ways to engage those leaders. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that as a CSU, we've been recommended to move away from it and actually straight up told we shouldn't do it. But something you need to consider is, and I think Casey may have said this already, but if you are doing stipends, who is then ensuring that that work is getting done? So who's going to be quote unquote supervising them, even though they're not official student employees? Would it be the AS president, the AS executive director? Because that is something that if you're paying them to produce a product, and who's to say the product is produced or not? What does that look like? And so just some things that you might want to think about.
And that's an excellent point, Molly, because that's the exact issue we're having right now is we've got paid employees, but no supervision. And so we're out of compliance in a number of different ways. And so we were trying to, so another idea we came up with was some students could possibly do work to earn funding for their club. So it may not go directly to them, because I believe what a stipend does is it potentially impacts students' financial aid. So if students are already, if they don't have any unmet need, it just goes in to reduce their loans, which isn't a horrible thing, you know, to have less loan when you graduate. But some students are like, oh, well, I thought this was in addition to these loans that I'm taking out. Yeah, like I said, another idea was then a club we're not just putting student fees into a club that we can't audit, it's that they've earned it to use. So that was another idea. So the other, we also don't need to, I mean, it's nice to provide financial support to students, but we could support students in other ways too. We could add more money to the food bank or something like that.
I think you and Molly definitely identified the fact that, you know, we need to be creative in what we're doing. And we need to figure out, Elizabeth, you have something to say?
Not about this. I want to make sure you finish your statement.
I think my statement's finished. I've been talking a lot and I keep saying the same things different ways.
I'm just wondering, because again, the stipulations, recommendations, I didn't read anything about the 1 year stipulation that this would only be happening for 1 year. I thought, like, try to express that as clearly as possible, so having that in there.
That can definitely go in there.
Yeah, so like turning into clubs and turning into group threes, it would all be for the one academic year. And as soon as that happens and we can find some recovery within these hard financial times, we can pull all of y'all back in.
There's a comment I know from Amora, and then Gabrielle, I'm not sure with what you're telling me. So I'll go ahead and ask Gabrielle to comment as well after Amora. Vanessa, could you unmute Amora?
Thank you for unmuting me. Yeah, my comment, it's about the stipend for the AS positions, I believe. I believe that the reason that the CSU says not to give like student stipends in this scenario is because it really complicates financial aid. I know that receiving my stipends for this position was very complicated. It delayed my financial aid. And my issue aside, I just think that stipends, they stimulate, the reason they cause problems is because they stimulate the need for the loan company to be like, oh, we're going to switch it out. And so sometimes the loan company's like, this is too complicated. So I think that it's important to give the money, if we want to award these students the money, to give them in like more student and school-led ways, like point system, all that, just because financial aid, I really believe that it's important to have like someone from the financial aid department handle that along with Kendra, because both do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So,
So am I
Vanessa?
hearing that points like perks, like C points and stuff don't impact financial aid? Is that correct? Amal?
Or Janessa, she's muted.
Okay, there she is. Okay.
Yeah, I just got unmuted. It does affect it, but it's like a different route because the J points are and T points are already like given, and so with C points you can add value like online, and then it's like J point and says through housing and dining, and housing and dining is its own corporation. So it's I would say it's a different system because it's like it translates differently. Because switching out loans is more complicated and requires multiple people and financiers to handle that.
Okay. So it sounds like instead of doing a stipend, you're suggesting doing a perk program, similar to like our committee compensation plan right now? Okay.
Okay. I think that general direction is great. I think that something needs to be kind of done tonight, so that way we have time to keep not to keep going with this meeting, but to keep the budget process going along. Casey, can you remind me what the budget process is from this point on? Because I might just be a little confused on it right now.
The final recommended budget will need to be either proposed today or at next Friday's meeting, as it will need to be then prepared post one of these meetings to be sent to the HSU president's office for review.
Okay. So with that said, and with those pieces of conversation now on our minds, what does the board want to do? Okay. So, there's some things that we could do. Potentially, we could say, yes, let's go with this. Let's approve this recommendation along with the accompanying language to move forward. And then that can kind of get done out and worked out on the back end. But if the board knows and understands that this is the general direction that we're going in, then we can figure things out, not figure things out, but make things work. Okay, there's a recommendation to try to vote on it tonight. The longer we wait, the longer this will take to get to the president to be finalized. Therefore, the less time the funding programs will have to promote any positions they need to hire for. Okay, so what is the motion? Applicants need to appeal any changes made tonight. I want to say they appealed, and then based upon that appeal, we then deliver a recommendation. And then I'm not sure. I think we're just gonna keep going round and round with these rounds of appeals and recommendations if we don't just do it until the final recommendation. Casey, what do you think?
In consultation, like with the fiscal code, I would consider it kind of ambiguous. We have gone through now 2 sets of appeals. So one interpretation of our section 5 of our fiscal code, the budget process and approval of the AS Board of Directors. One interpretation would be that we have done 2 sets of appeals, and so we've given programs multiple opportunities to appeal the budget. But the interpretation of 5.01 and 5.02 could also mean that every time the Board of Directors alters the budget, that appeals need to be asked for. This could potentially be mitigated next week by having this new recommendation come forward, having there be a discussion time for appeals or a call for it. But our language isn't incredibly clear, and so it's more like what the board is comfortable with doing. And I would say that there has been 2 good opportunities for appeals to occur.
And I would agree with that. There's a recommendation coming from Cadillo to vote on this tonight. We have been trying to be really transparent in this process and the struggles that we're going through as student leaders, and and trying to understand how we can work together to make something better. And we just can't keep going round and round in circles. So with that said, I would ask for a motion. There's a hand raised question from Rita.
I was going to approve the recommended budget and the accompanying budget language for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year.
So I thank you for that, but I want to make very clear that we're talking about this that's pulled up right in front of us right now at this moment, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to approve the recommended budget that's in front of us right now at this moment with the accompanying budget language, or with the accompanying language.
I thought Jordan second on the group on the chat.
Okay, second from Lamar. Is there any objections or abstentions to this motion being made? Rita, do you still have your hand raised?
No, sorry.
Oh, discussion. Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion on this item? Comment from Park.
Hey y'all, I guess just without having been able to look at this recommendation for very long, just from hearing kind of the discourse, I would caution the board from potentially moving to increase their own stipends while also defunding the entirety of the AS office staff and most of the program staff, and would just caution, just advise everyone to be very cautious as pro staff, student staff are being let go of from multiple areas across campus, to just be really careful about that thought process.
You know, Casey, thank you so much for that, because that completely that number is not official at all, because the board of directors did not recommend anything yet. The board of finance hasn't recommended anything yet either. The board of finance approved something, but it did not bring it back to the board of directors table for that to come up. So that number is not accurate at all about what should happen. And so that number is definitely about to go down right now. Caldillo, you know, I do see what you're saying. Claudio says, I believe that we are fine in raising how much we get paid since we are getting rid of our student assistants, which will probably mean that board members might be asked to take on a few more responsibilities. That's a fair point. You know, I feel like it's out of my hands. So what I think I need real discussion. Like I can't keep reading people's comments off because then it sounds like I'm saying it, and I want to facilitate a conversation. So Janessa, can you go ahead and unfreeze folks or allow them to unfreeze each other?
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and open it up for discussion. I would really encourage discussion to be made because we seem to be going back and forth, and we need to find out what we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and go more than Cano Sanchez. Can each of you mute yourself if you're not speaking?
Yeah, just to clarify, I do agree with AS Board staff member Casey's point about not funding ourselves and defunding the whole university. I just wanted to clarify when I was talking about giving a point system, so C points and J points instead of a stipend, I was mentioning it for like student assistance. So instead of like completely taking out that position, if we were to have this positions, I'd say instead of a stipend, we can give them that point system. So that's where I was coming from. I was not saying that we should get points because I think we get paid enough. You know, arguably, I know there might be people who disagree with me. I believe we get paid enough, at least as a college representative. But yeah, I was mentioning the point system is if we were to have student assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and go Cano Sanchez.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Casey for bringing that to our attention. We had actually just put that number on there to show the board how what that would look like. But yeah, this decision hasn't been made, and also like the VP and myself had already said that, you know, this is discussion for April 24th, and the Jeremiah gave a recommendation for that to be added to the 5-year strategic plan. So I just wanted to bring that up into the universe that that is what the suggestion is. So if we were to have those increase, it would be increased much later, would be revisited by the future board when the future board decides that, you know, the finances are back up, probably when everything's back to how it was and better than it was. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to bring that back up.
Thank you. Claudia, if you want to bring up your point again.
I just wanted to, you know, be realistic. If we do get rid of our student assistants, whether that's a good or bad idea, we do have to be realistic with how much more work that would be placed either on our professional staff or on us as board members, or both probably. And because of that additional work that we collectively will have to do, it does make sense that we'll be paid a little bit more for those added responsibilities, whether they go across the board or it's just like certain members, depending on how many responsibilities they hold now. And then maybe based off of that, we can decide, okay, well, let's say the representatives will, you know, equally take on the responsibilities that the student assistants had. So then they get the pay raises, but execs stay at how much they get paid, or something like that. That is just, you know, an example.
Thank you. Janessa also noted in the chat, you can go ahead and speak if you want to about it, but that the 10K would be, it would be a $10,000 difference. So, you know, it's really in the board of directors' hands at this point about what they want to do. There's a first and a second to approve the recommended budget that was before us, which is currently in front of us right now. So there's a first and a second to do it. You know, it's up to I think now, I don't. Claudia?
Honestly, I don't really understand the whole student leadership thing. Let me say that again. We are student leaders. That's not what I meant. I don't understand the student leadership conference. I don't know if like we just didn't talk about it enough, but honestly, I feel like that's something that we should just zero out. yeah, so that's like a,
I'm,
well, I'm a advisor, so I don't know if I can give a friendly amendment, but I recommend that as a friendly amendment if anyone would like to give that.
and I'm going to strongly recommend that we don't do that, that the board doesn't do that. But I see what you're saying. I think the point of having that was really to make sure that we provide some type of leadership opportunities for all students, and also really to help out with AS branding as well, to make sure that AS and associated students is contributing to the development of our leaders here on campus. So Janessa, can you change that back? Yes. Thank you. Goodness gracious. So there's a question from Amora. So we're gonna go to Amora, Cano Sanchez, and then we're gonna provide some clarification for Pam on the leadership conference. Amora? They can't unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. Got
Okay.
it. Yeah, so my question is how many people go to the Student Leadership Conference from Humboldt State University?
So my understanding about the Student Leadership Conference is is Ebony still on?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I had
So
to leave at about 6:45 and put it in the chat.
Okay, okay. So and maybe Pam can, Molly, okay, Molly, Pam, would one of you please explain what the intent of leadership conference is, please?
So, and this is from my understanding, so Dr. Turnbow, one of her big initiatives this next year is, this year we've been, or these past couple of years, our club's orientation has really been dull and boring and not at all beneficial to our student leaders. So Dr. Turnbow's big push is for us to evolve the club's orientation into a leadership conference, and all the mandated sessions that we historically have had as a part of our leadership conference, or as a part of our orientation, be online components. And so leadership conference would be a way for student organization leaders. And I think we had briefly talked about there being like an AS track as well. So like programs who get AS funding or even an AS executive board would go through a track in order to get different skills, things like interpersonal communication, facilitation, Robert's Rules of Order. And so it'd be a day-long conference, and we are offering 3 of them in the fall semester and 1 in the spring semester. And they would be all about learning different skills. And then we would have these ongoing leadership skill shops that would be facilitating through the library. And those ones wouldn't have any costs associated with it, but the leadership conference would, because it's an all-day conference. And so there would be breakfast and lunch. And I think the goal is that it's not the president and treasurer, but it would be like the whole executive board team or the whole organization if they wanted. So for example, this was presented to Brothers United when I was meeting with them regarding something else, and they were like, oh, can all of our brothers go? And so it's something that people are actually excited about and our students are looking forward to. And one of our big things is we really have to push our branding of what is leadership, and that you don't have to be a leader in order to attend this. Pam and I, and mainly Pam really, we're still in the very preliminary stages of mapping this out. And so I do have to give credit to Pam, and we have to get more clarification on what specifically Dr. Turnbow wants from us in regards to this event. But the goal is to make it a bigger thing than it has been historically. And it's not about policies and procedure, but more about personal development and personal growth. And so we have a lot of different opportunities for our students to gain skills in a more engaging conference style. So basically it'd be like we're hosting 3 different conferences all day in the fall semester and 1 in the spring.
Yes, yes, Cassie, you can.
So I recommended that as a friendly amendment. So if anyone wants to pick it up and recommend it as a friendly, recommend it as a friendly amendment to the original motioners.
So I think just original motioners, those are Rieta and Lamar. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I saw it in the chat.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's an ask or recommendation. The recommendation to your motion. You can accept or not accept or.
For clarification, wouldn't it have us rescind our motion just to make that friendly amendment to allow that amendment to go through?
Could you repeat your question?
Well, essentially, our motion was to approve the budget that we have currently, but due to the friendly amendment of taking the 10,000 out, that would rescind our motion to allow the motion for the 10,000 to essentially go through. I could be completely wrong. I'm so sorry.
No. I'm looking at this. Okay, so yeah. So I guess there's been 2 amendments. Let's do this thing called the Gordian knot motion, which basically just unties everything. Like we need to start over. I'm confused, and I think at the point where the chair is confused, we're all confused. So
at this point, there's a motion on the floor from Rueda, seconded by Lamar, to adopt the proposed budget recommendation and attached budget language. Caudillo was recommending a friendly amendment, which wouldn't require the motion to be rescinded. It would be additive to it. But if the original motioners are not in favor of it, it doesn't need to be added. The motion would then not be friendly amended.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Casey.
Myself, I accept the friendly amendment. So related, I can't speak.
There's a comment made by Kim. Just kind of want to.
So Kim commented towards Officer Claudia. You recommend that raising board member pay because they might be taking on more responsibility. However, this is not equitable since the board has recommended that programs like CCAT and Student Legal Lounge reduce their paid positions while still providing the same services that we were, but now unpaid. I don't think I needed to address that one, but thank you, Liz, for bringing it to my attention. It seems to be resolved. So yeah. Brianna, did you accept or deny?
I was talking to my muted self, so sorry. I will accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, it's accepted. And the AS Club's Leadership Conference, like the AS contribution to that piece is now 0.
I'm sorry. Is there any way to take that back? I was trying to be in good faith with my counter partner who seconded with me, but I think that based on everything that everyone was saying and Janessa saying how we could play a really big part in that and really help students, I don't feel comfortable as a student affairs vice president getting rid of that.
Thank you for that piece. So you can amend your own motion with your counterpart's approval.
I agree with Brianna. Sorry, yeah. This is definitely kind of again hearing everyone. I definitely think this is a valuable piece that would be a great asset to AS and the students as general. So I, if possible, do rescind my second from that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. So I need a motion to, so because the motion was rescinded, now I have to ask for a new motion, correct?
No, sorry, as far as I hear it, the original motion on the table still stands, and
Okay.
it sounds like discussion has come to a close, and so a vote can be taken.
That's great. With that being said, I'll go ahead and ask for if there are any objections or abstentions to this motion passing, which would be the approval of this budget as we see it in front of us, along with the draft, along with the recommended accompanying language. Any objections? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Okay. Good job, everyone. Amal, there was a raised hand. Do you have a question, or did you mean to abstain? Okay, I don't. Question and comment. So we did just vote on that. That is business. That is not. I don't believe it should be brought up again. Let's keep rolling on with the rest of our agenda. Thank you all so much for your dedication. Appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is legislation and act to prioritize student engagement. This was a resolution that was submitted by myself, Vice President Finley, and coordination with the College of Natural Resources and Sciences Representative Weinberg. Basically, this resolution is saying, we're gonna prioritize students in all spaces, and we are going to push for that to have happened. In addition to that, we're going to repeal legislation that was done by past boards to promote our and we will promote our athletes. So it's in a second reading. Nothing changed from last time. So are there any questions, or can we motion to move into formal discussion?
Did you ask for that?
Huh?
Motion to enter formal discussion?
There's a motion before to enter formal discussion. Is there a second?
Second, Lizcano.
Second, from Carlos Sanchez. Is there any objections or abstentions to this motion passing?
Potentially, my only objection is I heard, could we move into formal discussion, which is not, we are moving into informal discussion. Formal discussion would happen after a motion.
Yeah, I apologize.
Yeah, that was on me as well too.
Okay, great. Then I'm good.
All right, so let's go ahead and start over. Can I get a motion to move into informal discussion?
Motion to move into informal discussion.
Can I get a second?
Second, Carlos Sanchez.
And a second, Carlos Sanchez, and a first from Rita to move into informal discussion. Is there any objections or abstentions to this motion passing? Seeing none, the motion passes. We're in informal discussion. Are there any questions about this resolution? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, question from, I saw Rita. Okay, Amora.
Never mind, Cassie answered it right now.
Okay, great. Okay, are there any questions at all? All right. Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to approve this resolution.
I'm- I move to approve this resolution.
There's a motion to approve this resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Rada to approve this resolution. Is there any objections or abstentions to this motion passing? Wait, we're moving into formal discussion. Is there any more discussion? All right, seeing none, is there any objections or abstentions to this motion passing? Seeing none, the motion passes. The resolution is approved. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you again. So next up on the agenda is legislation enact to create a bylaws committee. So I'm looking for the proposed reader. Montel, could you go ahead and, if you feel comfortable, doing the first reading? Or
I believe he's the second one. Are we doing the second one this week too?
oh, this is ours.
This is the bylaws. Yeah.
This is ours. Okay. I'm sorry. I wrote a lot of resolutions last week. My mind's not. It's been a long meeting, so let's just get through this. So this resolution, I'll go ahead and read it. This is an Act 2 Create Bylaws Committee. So we'll go ahead and start off. And I lost the thing. So, whereas the Associate Students Board of Directors of Humboldt State University, HSU, is a single recognized voice of over 6,300 students. And whereas the mention of Associated Students of Humboldt State University serves to assist in the protection of the rights and interests of the individual student and the student body, and to stimulate the social, the educational, social, physical, and cultural well-being of the university community. And whereas the 2019-20 AS Board of Directors set updating the AS codes and bylaws as a priority during the spring training and created guiding documents task force. And whereas it is the goal of the guiding documents task force to promote the continuity of constitutional maintenance and adherence of the associated students. And whereas the guiding documents task force, with the advice of the legislative vice president and executive director, has then assessed that there is a need for the creation of an AS bylaws committee. And whereas, as per Resolution 2019-2002, the legislative vice president having the trust of the association to make proper and accurate analysis concerning policies concerning associated students that would benefit the association as a whole, therefore be it resolved that the AS Board of Directors establishes an AS bylaws committee. Furthermore, be it resolved that the AS Board of Directors amends the administrative code to include section 1, and then it goes on. Janessa, can you scroll for me, or I forgot who's in charge of this one, to include section 1, membership. The membership is going to be the AS legislative, the Ledge VP as the presiding officer. This is the one's going to kind of help run the meeting. So the Justice Equity Officer and the Environmental Sustainability Officer. 3 students appointed by the Ledge VP, 2 students appointed by the Student Affairs Vice President, 1 AS representative appointed by the President, all with a 2/3 vote that would be required from the Board of Directors and the Executive Director. As for voting, only the students are able to vote, except for the Social Justice and Equity Officer and the Environmental Sustainability Officer. And I guess the meetings that we meet once a week or as deemed necessary by the chair, that is subject to change. I'm pretty sure it can change later on in the future. On the purpose/jurisdiction, this is where it gets interesting, so please pay attention. So, serves as an advisory group, assessing the needs and the goals of the association with respect to the maintenance and upkeep of the AS codes and bylaws. The bylaws committee shall have the sole power to recommend and modify the AS codes and constitution. Section 2.1 is section 5, bullet point 2.1. Any recommendations and modifications to the AS codes and bylaws must be brought before the bylaws committee for approval by majority vote. Resolve that copies of the resolution be sent to, but not limited to, associated students funded programs and to the offices of Humboldt State University President Tom Jackson Jr., as well as the Humboldt State University Vice Presidents and offices thereof. Okay. So that's a first reading. And we'll go ahead. I'll ask if we can move into informal discussion. I don't know. I don't believe we can move into informal discussion on this item because we're just in first reading right now. So with that being said, I'll just ask for some questions generally. Okay, let me back out of here. I'm looking for participants. Not seeing any questions. Okay, so thank y'all. This will be on the table next week. Next up, we have the banks discussion. From US Bank to Wells Fargo. We've heard a lot about what's going on, how much AS would save from this happening. So what the staff did basically was create a resolution with the Board of Finance's help to really focus on, well, what do students want to see out of the banking? The Board of Finance decided, yes, it would make sense for the board, for AS in general to switch over to Wells Fargo to make sure that we save some monies, as well as are able to, and then we could work to figure out different. We'll work together to figure out how we can better serve our community and really focus on where we put our money at. But just as a starting point, this is what the Board of Finance is thinking. So Janessa, I don't know if you want to add anything. Kendra, Casey.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. At this juncture, oh, sorry, I forget, I'm screen saving and I'm trying to pull something else up. At this juncture, both US Bank and Wells Fargo have similar investment practices. And so we are advocating this cost savings so that we can get to a time where we can scope out the local credit unions and banks so that like more purposeful, like everything everyone is saying about the social and environmental impacts is completely true about these large banks, these national banks investment practices. But at this point, the two that we have the choice between, there is, annual savings actualized by Wells Fargo, as well as operationally it working better since HSU uses Wells Fargo as their bank. And so this would not be a binding contract for any certain amount of time. This would just be in the interim to save money since we are in a very serious budget deficit.
Thank you, Casey. With that being said, this is in its first reading, so action can't be taken on it tonight. This will be back on the agenda next week. If there are no questions or anything to kind of be talked about for this one, I'll go ahead and keep moving on with the rest of the agenda. So next up, we have our last piece of legislation. This resolution was authored by myself, Representative Weinberg, and Representative Floyd, and I had to create a parliamentarian. Montel, did you want to go ahead and get the conversation started on this one? Or go ahead and read it.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the act to create a parliamentarian to the AS Board of Directors. I'm going to skip the first two whereases, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Whereas the Board of Directors created a task force at the beginning of the spring semester to evaluate and recommend the policies that would benefit the association as a whole. And whereas the legislative vice president is responsible for the maintenance and adherence to the Constitution codes and policies for the associated students. And whereas it had, hold on, my computer's acting stupid. Where it has become more apparent to the AS Guiding Docs Task Force and the legislative vice president that it has been beneficial to the board as a whole to create a position solely dedicated to the ensuring that the adherence of our parliamentary procedures and the upkeep of our knowledge is upheld. Therefore, it will be resolved that the AS Board of Directors create a position of parliamentarian to be on the board of directors as a role of parliamentarian is added to the government codes as a new section and serve the parameters as follows. The AS parliamentarian is to be a student advisor that is responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of institutional knowledge for the AS board of directors. 2, the AS parliamentarian shall be responsible for advising the board chair on parliamentary procedures when conducting meetings. Voting contingency was 3. 3.1, the AS parliamentarian shall be appointed by the AS president with 2/3 approval of the Associated Students Board. 4, the term of office, the parliamentarian shall serve for 2 academic school years on the AS board. 4.1, it's preferable to have the student that at least has 2 consecutive years left at HSU. Powers. 5.1, the AS parliamentarian shall have the authority to prepare articles of impeachment to be reviewed by the AS legislative vice president upon finding violations. Furthermore, it would be resolved that copies of this resolution to be sent, but not limited to the people, associated students, funded programs in the office of Humboldt State University President Tom Jackson Jr., as well as the Humboldt State University Vice Presidents and officers therefore.
Okay, thank you so much, Montel, for that. This is in its first reading. Action cannot be taken on it anyway. And we are also at the end of our meeting of our extended time. I do just want to say thank you all. I don't know if we want to go ahead and continue on with the agenda, move into announcements if anyone has any.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the auto insurance, there's many nationwide that are giving back compensation. So if you have that.
Thank you, Amora. Is there any more announcements? Not seeing.
If you know anybody who was tentative about running for a position, people can still be a write-in candidate for elections until next Thursday night at midnight. And even if people aren't running or anything, make sure that you and your friends are voters. So the elections will be coming through your personal HSU email Monday through Friday, the last week of April. And so just make sure to let people know that that's coming their way. If they have any questions, either be a resource for them or point them to Cassie's direction to help them understand and work within elections.
Thank you, Cassie. Thank you, Casey. Goodness. Goodness. Yeah. Thank you all so much for bearing with me through this whole process. It was a long meeting, an extra long meeting today, but you all did great jobs at advocating and on behalf of your students. I really appreciate all of your dedication and support throughout this process. Let's go ahead and make sure that we finish the rest of this year off strong. Bye, everyone.